In today's video, you'll learn something that can really help you. So like it and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Let's get started.
The water arrived without warning. Ethan was standing on the edge of the river when he realized something was wrong. It wasn't just the volume of the current. It was the sound, a low, constant roar, as if the earth were breathing with difficulty. He had known that river for 40 years. He had grown up fishing on those banks, learned to swim in those shallow summer waters. But on that March morning, the river seemed different, dark, agitated, overflowing with a rage that did not belong to it. Beside him, Cole sniffed the air with his nostrils wide open. The black Labrador was 8 years old enough to carry scars and wisdom, and rarely got worked up about anything. But at that moment, his ears were raised, his body tense, his eyes fixed on a point downstream. Ethan followed the dog's gaze. In the middle of the current, among broken branches and the muddy foam the flood was carrying, there was something thrashing, too small to be a log, too alive to be debris. He blinked, trying to focus through the gray morning light, and then he saw clearly a creature with dark fur, its front paws fighting desperately against the force of the water. Ethan's heart sank even before he fully understood what he was seeing. Cole had already taken 3 steps toward the water. "Cole, no." The voice came out firm, but the dog stopped only for a second. Just one. Then, without looking at his owner, he entered the river. Ethan shouted his name. The wind carried the sound away. He ran along the muddy bank, his feet sinking with every step, his eyes trying to follow the dog's dark fur among the brown waves of the flood. Cole swam with the determination of someone who was not calculating risks. He was simply moving forward, as if he knew there was no time. The creature in the water was a pup, a wolf pup, and it was drowning. Its paws were no longer striking with strength. Its head dipped under, came up, dipped again. The current had no mercy. It carried everything with the same cold brutality. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell us in the comments what you thought, and which city or country you're watching from. Cole disappeared for a moment beneath the surface. Ethan held his breath. Then, the black fur came back up. The dog was swimming sideways, fighting against the current at an angle, trying to get closer to the pup without being dragged along. It was a maneuver no human could have taught him. It was pure instinct. Ethan ran faster, ignoring the mud, ignoring the cold that had already climbed up his ankles. He searched his memory for the point where the river made a sharp bend, further ahead, a place where the current lost strength for a few seconds before accelerating again. If Cole could make it there with the pup, maybe there was a chance. "Here," he shouted, not knowing if the dog could hear him. "Cole, here." The Labrador turned his head. For a second, the two looked at each other through the water and the distance. Then Cole adjusted his direction. Ethan reached the bend with his lungs burning. He stepped in at the edge, the icy water rising to his knee, then to his thigh. He stretched his arm as far as he could. The current pushed against him, insistent, as if it did not want to let go of what it had captured. Cole arrived first. He carried the pup by the scruff, with that strange gentleness dogs sometimes show with very fragile things. The pup did not resist. It was exhausted, its eyes half open, its body limp. Ethan closed his fingers into Cole's soaked fur and pulled both of them to the bank. They fell together into the mud. The dog, the pup, and Ethan kneeling between them, trying to understand what had just happened. The pup was breathing, fast, shallow, but breathing. Cole sniffed it from head to hind legs, then lay down beside it, as if they were the most natural thing in the world. Ethan watched the two of them for a long moment. The rain had eased, but the sky remained closed, heavy. He felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't relief. It was that rare feeling of witnessing something that shouldn't have happened, but happened anyway. That was when he heard the sound coming from the forest. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the river. It was something moving among the trees with heavy, deliberate steps, now stopped right at the edge of the woods. Watching, Cole slowly raised his head. The pup opened its eyes fully for the first time. There were three. Three wolves at the edge of the forest, motionless like statues of gray and shadow. Ethan did not move. His body made that decision before his brain finished processing what his eyes were seeing. A sudden movement would be the most costly mistake he had ever made. He stayed exactly where he was, kneeling in the mud, with Cole pressed against his leg and the pup between them. The largest of the wolves took a step forward. Just one. But it was enough for Ethan to feel the weight of that gaze. Yellow, direct, without the slightest ambiguity. It wasn't curiosity. It was assessment. Cole did not growl. He did not retreat. He lay beside the pup with his ears raised and his eyes open, so still that it seemed he had decided, on his own, that there was nothing to fear at that moment. Ethan didn't know whether he admired or envied that calm. The pup moved. It was a small movement, the front paws contracting, the head trying to lift. But it was enough. The larger wolf stopped advancing. The other two, who had remained farther back among the trees, moved a few steps closer. None of them made a sound. Ethan then noticed something that had escaped his attention until that moment. The pup had a white mark behind its left ear, a small, irregular patch about the size of a thumb. And the largest wolf, the female that remained at the front of the group, had exactly the same mark in the same place. It was the mother. He understood that in his gut before he understood it with his mind. And along with that understanding came another, harder to carry. That female had watched everything. She had seen the pup being taken by the flood. She had seen Cole enter the river. She had stayed there, at the edge of the forest, unable to do anything. Only watching. Ethan had never thought much about what wolves feel. But at that moment, looking into those unblinking yellow eyes, he had the clear impression that the animal before him had spent the last few minutes inside a kind of agony that did not need words to be recognized. There was something in that gaze that went beyond instinct, that went beyond what he could explain with the vocabulary he had available to talk about animals. Ethan realized that his right hand was trembling. Cole stood up slowly and did something Ethan would never forget. Cole took a step toward the female. Ethan wanted to hold him back.
If this story resonates with you in any way, click the like button so I know that this content makes sense to you. And take the opportunity to tell me below, from what corner of the world are you following this journey?
His hand reached for the collar and stopped halfway. There was something in the way the dog moved, slow, without tension in his body, tail low but not tucked, that told him, without words, not to interfere. So he stayed where he was, breathing slowly, his knees sunk in the cold mud. The Labrador took 2 more steps forward. The female did not retreat. She remained still, her eyes fixed on him, her nostrils working the air with the speed of someone reading an entire story in each particle of scent. The other 2 wolves did not move either. Cole stopped less than a meter from her. The 2 stayed like that for a time Ethan could not measure. The river continued roaring behind them. The wind continued through the trees, but everything seemed to happen at a much lower volume, as if the world had made space for that specific silence. Then the female lowered her head. It was not submission. It was something else, something Ethan had no name for, but recognized the way one recognizes rain before feeling it on the skin. It was recognition, pure, direct, without ceremony beyond that single movement. Cole turned and went back to the pup. The pup was already trying to stand. Its paws slipped in the mud, its legs still without strength, but its head was raised and its eyes, green and wide, fully awake, were fixed on its mother. A sound came from it, small, hoarse, almost inaudible, but the female heard it. She crossed the bank in quick steps and lowered her muzzle to it. She sniffed, licked, sniffed again. The pup pushed its head against her neck with an urgency that had nothing animal about it. It had everything of a child. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Cole stood beside them, watching, He did not move away, did not advance. He stayed exactly where he should be, as if he knew that moment did not belong to him. That was when a younger wolf stepped out of the forest. It was smaller than the female, with wide paws, its muzzle still without scars. It walked slowly toward Cole and stopped just a few centimeters from him. It sniffed from the muzzle to the neck, slowly. Cole stayed still, letting it happen. Then the wolf pressed its muzzle against the dog's, a gesture without a name in any language, but one Ethan recognized immediately. It was not a threat. It was not any kind of test. It was gratitude. The female looked at Ethan one last time. He could not later explain what was in that gaze. It was not a threat. It was not curiosity. It was something more like the way certain people look when they want to say something that language cannot reach. He held the gaze without blinking, without moving forward, without stepping back. And for a few seconds, perhaps the strangest of his entire life, he felt that he was truly being seen by a being that had no reason at all to trust him, but had decided to do so anyway. The female turned. The pup followed her, still unsteady on its legs, still leaving small, irregular marks in the damp mud. The young wolf went after them. The third, who had never fully stepped out from the shadows of the trees, disappeared before Ethan even realized it had gone. In less than a minute, the forest swallowed them back. Ethan remained still for a while. He did not want to measure. Cole sat beside him and pressed his muzzle against the man's knee, his usual way of asking if everything was all right. Ethan placed his hand on the dog's head and said nothing. There was nothing that needed to be said. The river was still running high. The sky was still overcast. But something had changed in the air on that muddy bank in the middle of Montana, a pressure that had vanished without him noticing exactly when. He thought about those 40 years by that river, about everything he had fished, observed, endured, about how many times he had looked at that forest, as if it were a backdrop, beautiful, distant, separated from him by a line that never needed to be crossed. That morning, an old dog and a wolf pup had erased that line without asking permission. There was no package lesson in it. There was no simple moral to take home. There was only this, the gesture of Cole entering a river without hesitation, and what came after. The silent proof that kindness, even between species that do not share language, territory, or history, can open passages where before there were only walls. Cole stood up and walked slowly back along the bank. Ethan followed him. If this story touched you in any way, tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and say which city or country you're watching from.